Do you ever read a book and then you watch a lot of reviews other people did of that book and you feel like you're the only person who understood the book the way you did? I definitely have that feeling. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my review of Study for Obedience, a Booker Prize long-listed novel by Bernstein, which I finished reading. Probably be the only other Booker Prize novel that I read and review, depending on how things go the rest of this week. I did read Pearl and I reviewed that, but I read Study for Obedience and I finished it, and I thought, this is a book where I have lots of thoughts. And maybe lots of things I want to say. And it's possible that some of the things I want to say are going to come out kind of spoilerish. So I'll make a little timestamp where the spoilers stop, where the spoilers start. So you can skip that if you want to, and I'll give you a fair warning that it's about to happen. So Study for Obedience by Bernstein is a really short novel. It's around 190 pages. It's told in the first-person voice of our main character, who is a woman who really has not had a particularly good life, or a successful life, I guess as we might define it, who goes to live with her brother, who is rich and lives in this large house outside this small village in a country only referred to as a northern country. And she goes there and she takes care of him. And the only person's point of view we get on any of the events that happen are hers. All of the thoughts that we get about what's going on in the novel are hers, and I think it's safe to say that she is somewhat an unreliable narrator. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that anybody who reads the book is going to automatically start kind of questioning this character and why she says why she thinks what she thinks, why she does what she does. Is she really what she says she is, or is there something else going on? And I think that is in part the genius of the book. Another thing I think that's really an ingenious part of the book is the way the book is written. So the book is written in a really kind of specific style in which our narrator tells us events that are going on, her thoughts, what she sees, in these long sentences that have lots of dependent clauses and have a tendency to kind of seem like they're going off in all directions. And oftentimes, at the end of those sentences, you might think, well, where did that sentence start? What was this sentence about? And that can be really a frustrating reading experience. Now, for me, I enjoyed the style quite a bit. I know a lot of people have mentioned the style and how essentially from their point of view not a lot happens in the book, and how don't understand why all this detail is being added. But I think that writing style was chosen by the author specifically to obscure motives and actions so that you as the reader perhaps get lost in what's going on. And that as you slowly go through and you read and become more accustomed to the style, you start to pick up on more and more of the things that I think the author is really getting at, more and more aspects of the story and this main character as we go along. So I think that style is incredibly important to the book itself. Having said that, I also think that the way the book is written is pretty beautiful. So I wanted to give you one example, kind of a long example, to give you some idea of the style. So here we go. This is the only reading I'll do from the book. Sitting one afternoon on a rock by the creek, I observed the water running under the melting ice, carving out patterns, and then the ice itself, in its incalculable shades of white and gray and blue. How long and lovely and terrible the springtime, how unbelievable to be alive. If I could be anything, I thought, sitting on my rock, eating granola bar, I would be that ice, with its multitudes always in the process of transformation. It was not long before I took to immersing myself, of course I did, in the lake on the hill, breaking up the clear layers of ice with my walking stick, treading slowly into its dark waters, deeper and deeper, feeling on the brink of something, of sinking, I thought, not knowing what else to call it. Another way of putting this is I begin to take note of the rhythms of the place and even from a distance of the town. So that, I think, is a good example of the way in which gives you a good idea, a taste for how the book is written, and I think it really ends up being brilliant in and of itself is a beautiful writing style, but I think it, as other people have said about it, I think that writing style is really important to kind of understanding the book and the character and kind of what's going on and what it's about. So essentially this woman goes to live with her brother, whose wife and kids have just left him for reasons that I think kind of become clear, even though it's not alluded to very often. And she takes care of him, and he's really demanding. He has really specific demands, and he's really rich, and she is happy to go along with this. You know, she's talks constantly about being obedient, about trying to do, you know, what she's supposed to do. And in the course of that, she reveals things about her history, about her parents, her family, her love life, her work life. And in each one of those areas, you know, from a Western point of view, I guess, she's been unsuccessful. She has run up against men who have not appreciated her, or who have in some ways discounted her or dismissed her or failed to promote her, and women who've done the same. Her parents were indifferent. She's the youngest in her family, so her family had expectations of her which she had to live up to. In school, she wasn't really well liked, and so she learned to how to disappear. And a lot of what we learn about her is that she's learned ways to essentially become a non-entity, a person who, you know, nobody really thinks about, nobody takes into consideration, nobody does anything remotely to indicate that they care about her or that she matters. So she moves to her brother's home, and it's outside this little small community in an unnamed northern country. And we begin to learn things. She eventually has to go to this little village that her brother's house outside of, and we begin to learn things about the villagers and her. She can't speak the language. She's Jewish. This town and this area, in some ways, seem to have been complicit, or at least involved in the Holocaust. That all these things begin to come out. And as she spends more time, as she goes to the village more often, she becomes the person who the villagers begin to blame for all these weird things that are happening. A sheep dying tangled in barbed wire, a dog who appears to be pregnant who may not be, you know, death of farm animals, problems that are happening. And she becomes this kind of figure that the town blames. And then her brother comes back, and things happen with her brother, which also then create these suspicions in the townspeople and in us, the reader. And one of the things I want you to think about is, if you read this book, one of the things I want you to think about is whether or not she is a victim of hatred, whether or not she is a victim of anti-Semitism, whether or not she's a victim of superstition, whether or not she's a victim of her brother's controlling nature. Think about her status as a victim, and then think about what if what she's telling us isn't exactly true. What if we have to pick up on things that are really going on in this story from the things she says almost accidentally, almost like leaving clues in the book. And here's where I'll go into spoiler territory. So if you don't want to hear anything about my ideas about what I think is really happening in the book, now would be the time to stop listening or watching. So what I think is happening in the book is that this woman is actually not a victim. She pretends to be, and she pretends to accept this role of scapegoat, whether it's her family, her brother, her schoolmates, her work environment, or the scapegoat for the people in this village who believe that she is responsible for all these weird, bad things happening, and then will be responsible for the weird, bad things that happen to her brother and his health. And so, you know, on one level you can look at it that way, that she's the victim of this kind of irrational hatred, this kind of superstition, that she really hasn't done anything wrong. But I have a tendency to believe that she has found power in that scapegoat role, that she has found power in that victim role, and that while she may not have moved back to this community with an intent of taking vengeance on the people of this community in some way for their role in the Holocaust, or taking vengeance on her brother for his treatment of her, or for her family's treatment of her, that's what ends up happening. And she finds this kind of power in being somebody who's always accused of something, in being somebody who is always, you know, the subject of some kind of abuse of one kind or another. And since she kind of just says, well, if that's kind of how people are going to think about me, how can I use that? How can I perhaps use that for revenge? And I think her revenge on the townspeople for their part in the Holocaust, because her family came from the area where this village is. They're clearly Jewish refugees who left for the Americas, Canada, or the United States. I think Canada. Her brother, who's moved back to this place. In some ways, we don't know exactly what his motives are, but he's kind of become assimilated in the village so that he's not necessarily seen in the same way his sister is, and she's going to take this kind of scapegoat status and use it. She does things that seem to be innocent, but when you look back on it, are kind of intentionally provocative, perhaps. And she seems to enjoy this role she has eventually of being able to scare people, of the townspeople being afraid of her. She seems to enjoy this role of being controlled by her brother until, he's actually the one who is controlled by her. And while we don't have a whole lot of clues about exactly how she gains this control over him, I'll leave that to you to read. She definitely does by the end. And I think the book is really about vengeance. And one of the reasons why I think that's true about the book, and one of the reasons why I have these ideas about the book, has to do with one of the quotes that comes at the very beginning of the book. One of the epigraphs. And one of the epigraphs is somebody named Paula Rego, and I don't know who that is, but it says, "I can turn the tables and do as I want. I can make women stronger. I can make them obedient and murderous at the same time." And I think if you take that, you put that quote in your head throughout the entire book, then you'll get a very different impression of this woman who's the main character than the one she appears to be giving and the one that seems to be on the surface. Okay, well, there's the end of the spoilers. I don't have anything else to say, but if you've read this book, you have thoughts on this book, I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.